in different zones, different time zones, and so this might be a different odd hour for you. But thanks for attending this, and I will try to be as concise about or as brief about describing the ThunderPlug. But if you have any more questions about it, please feel free to ask us now, or even during your usage of the plug. If you have more questions, just send us an email, and we'll be happy to help you. So I'll begin with describing what the plug is. A ThunderPlug is basically your size of your home router, but it does more than the router, whereas it has its own server that we install on it, the iFormBuilder plug server, and it creates its own network which your handheld devices can connect to. So that gives us the flexibility to use it in the field operations where there is the connectivity is very low, and plus there is no need for power as well. So you could just use the solar battery packs and get power for the plug. This makes it very mobile and helps you collect the data on the device, on the smallest device, which doesn't even have to have internet. It could connect to the Wi-Fi and then just sync the data to the plug. As this is one of the pictures that actually perfectly describes the usage of the plug. This is from one of our projects in Africa, where the plug could sitting in that battery in that backpack, which is a solar backpack, and the user is collecting information on his iPod. And what he does there is, once the information is collected, he, instead of syncing to the cloud, which probably there is no network on his iPod and there is no cell tower nearby for him to get network, so he can safely collect the data on the plug. And the plug being the server, the data is always safe and secure. Instead of like your device, you could always lose your device or the data could get corrupted on the device. The plug is more robust infrastructure that could give you the comfort of storing the data there. So this is a very good symbol for usage of a plug. Just briefly going over the technical specs, it has 1 GB RAM, it has 8 GB storage, it has the Wi-Fi model, which is a very big plus point. It has an Ubuntu operating system, which helps us load all our software and applications on it. To use the plug on the iFormBuilder platform, you need to have a dedicated database, which is something that we could help you set up. And you also need to have a power source because the plug doesn't have a battery of its own. So it needs to be powered on from a power source. And yes, the best case scenario for the plug is that we would require you to do an initial setup and sync before your project begins. So then when you get to the field, the plug is in the best condition to use. These are the key features from iFormBuilder's platform perspective, where we prefer the plug to be used with 20 users at a time. And if you need more users in the field, you probably should use more plugs. This being because of the plug storage requirement, we prefer that not a lot of people use the same plug and then you're running out of space. And then you have to always sync to the cloud within short intervals. So that's the reason we have the limit of 20 users. And if you need more, you could actually add on more plugs to the project. With that said, one thing I forgot to mention is you could have one or more plugs for the same project. So a plug is something which is very dynamic. You do not need to use the same plug for the same project. Once you're done collecting data, you could move on to the next project and use the same plug. So the other aspect, a key feature about the plug is, which we recently added, is you could build and edit the forms directly on the plug. So you do not need to do a sync from the cloud for adding new forms. If you have some technician in the field who could build forms and which want to be used on the field, you could just build them directly on the plug, use them. When you are collecting data, once you finish collecting data and once you're ready to sync to the cloud, the forms and the data will be synced to the cloud. So you will have the data on the cloud. So that's an added benefit, because sometimes when the plugs are assigned to a field, they're done months before, and if you need new forms in the field, you didn't have the flexibility earlier. So now that added flexibility gives it a push to make it more usable. Another advantage is you could analyze the data that is collected in the field right away. So earlier you used to probably collect the data in the field, send it to the cloud, and once the data is to the cloud, then somebody on the cloud side will go in and analyze, pull the data down, look at the data collected, analyze the data. If there is a correction, then assign it back to the field. So now that interim step is cut, where now everything can be done in the field without network. You basically connect to the plug, you sync all the data, and you can pull the feed reports, Excel reports, and get the data down and look at the data. If there is something missing, you can recollect it or reassign it. So it cuts your time between your data checks, and it also optimizes your data collection time. We also added another feature quite recently, was to add the GPS tracker on the plug, which gives you more accurate location. Where in very remote locations, it's hard to track with whatever the device locations come with default. So this GPS tracker is more robust and more accurate in terms of getting you the GPS points. And as I said before, you do not have to have an active source of power, as long as you can utilize something very similar to the backpack that we have shown. That gives you a good benefit of having your plug on all the time, wherever there is sun, wherever there is a solar battery available. So how it works is that the plug has to be first procured from iFormBuilder. Once you purchase the plug from iFormBuilder, we send the plug over to ship the plug to you. Once you get it, you have to assign the plug to a particular company, a particular profile, or a particular project. And once you do that, all the data related to that company, could be users, could be forms, could be options, will all be downloaded down to the plug. And once that is done, the plug is then ready for moving into the field. You could take the plug in the field and collect data on it, and then upload the data back to the cloud. And all this is actually done with securely, so there is very less chance of your data being lost. And one of the added benefit of security that we are experimenting right now is trying to secure the data on the local disk of the plug. So this gives you a benefit where if the plug is lost in the field, the data will not be stolen. So that's why we have an USB encryption key with the plug. So as the data is collected in the field, it will stay on a secure location. And if the key is not present, the plug will not boot up. Basically, you will never be able to access the plug data on the plug. And if once the key is present, you can then readily access the plug. So this is a scenario where we are trying to cover if the plug is stolen or if the plug is lost. The project doesn't need to fear that now the data is lost or data is available to somebody in malicious hands, right? So this is what we're trying to protect here. The device communication with the plug is all through SSL encryption, and that is already secure. Plus, at the same time, the plug communicating to the cloud is also in a secure communication. So we've covered all the aspects of the securing the plug. So that brings us to the plug procurement. And actually, sorry, I forgot to mention, if you have any questions during my presentation, just feel free to put the questions, and Barrett might stop me, or if the question is relevant, then I can answer it at the end of the presentation as well. So that brings us to the discussion about how to get a plug, procuring a plug. It's something you have to contact iFormBuilder sales, and once you have the sales team will send you a package, a purchase order, I think, an invoice, I think, and then once you fill it up, we'll prepare the plug for you with the base installation and ship it to you. And this process generally will be less than a week's time, so it would be easy to get your hands on the plug quickly.
Amol, can you answer to them? Do you ship across besides coming to the U.S., do you ship in other areas of the world?
We ideally do not ship across the globe. We will probably ship it somewhere locally. But if the project doesn't have a local office, then yes, we do ship. But in the past, whenever we have used plugs, the projects have local offices in the US, and we generally just ship it there. And the local office then does the setup part and then ships it to the project. So that step could be avoided if there is no office in the US, and if you have offices in Europe or Africa, we could just ship it directly there. Yes, so that's a possibility. So that's easy to get the plug, and so now we'll talk about once you get the plug, or what do you do? How do you make use of it? So this is how the plug physically looks like. It's almost, as I told you, it's very similar to a router, and it being on the ARM processor. Sorry, I'm going a little technical in here, but it's being on the ARM processor. It is a very low power user device, and that helps us generate. Turn it on from a solar battery because it just needs 5 volts and 2 amps. So once you have the plug with you, the first thing I would do is set up a profile that has to be synced to the plug. If you need more than one profile, you could do that as well. Once you set up that profile on the cloud that you need to sync, and you have all the forms ready, all the users ready, you should sync them to the plug. So that brings us to the point is that can new users be added on the plug? The short answer is no. We prefer that all the users being added to the cloud, and that's when when you sync, you get all the users that could use the plug. There is no restriction on the devices. You could add new devices in the field, but the usernames have to be added on the cloud. So so once your profiles are ready, you could. So I will quickly show you a demo of how to provision a profile.
And just to reiterate, this step needs to be done in an area where you have Wi-Fi and you have electricity, correct?
Yes. So provisioning needs internet access because you are doing that on the cloud, and any activity on the cloud needs internet access. So for our demo purposes, I'm using our domain training.iFormBuilder.com. Once I log in, I will be adding, as a server admin, I will go to manage profile, and I will add a new profile or new project. I'm assigning 10 users to this project, and I'm hoping that there are 10 forms that I can create.
And just to reiterate, so right now you're logged in as a server admin. A company admin or form builder cannot do this. This has to be a server admin.
Yes. So yes, a server admin can only add companies. I think that's the essence of it. So you have to contact your server admin if you need a new project. So that's what he will do, and then he can copy forms for you at the same time. So as you see here, I have a new profile. So what the server admin will also see is a ThunderPlug option, which a regular user or a company admin will not see. And this is where you actually provision. You assign a profile to the plug. And
so for some users, if their server admin will have already set this up for them.
Yes, some users who are end users probably do not need to relate to this. This is just background information that what happens before you start using the plug.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
You select the plug, you click on assign, and then you select the profile that you would like to assign to the plug. And since I created this new one, I'm going to update and assign it to the plug. So at this point, it requires at least for the user. So yeah, that's an oversight on my part. I have to create a sync user because we don't want the plug to be stranded in the field. The profile should at least have a sync user so all the data can be synced to the cloud. Go in and add a user. Here I'm adding a user. I'll just add a plug demo 1 user. And I'm creating a password for the user. All I need is a right to sync from the ThunderPlug. So this is an additional option that we added. So you don't have to be a company admin or a server admin to use the sync option. You could just be a sync write owner, and then you could still sync the data back to the cloud.
So if you just have the right to sync the ThunderPlug, you're not going to be able to see the data or any of the forms.
Yeah, you just be able to sync the data up to the cloud, which could be a task that you could assign somebody. So now let's get back to the ThunderPlug provisioning screen and see if it lets us do it this time. And as I said before, these tasks are already done before the project yet starts. So somebody who's end user of the plug probably is always, this is transparent to him, and he doesn't have a view of what happens behind the screen. Okay, so this has we have provisioned a new profile to the plug, and so now when the plug syncs to the cloud, it will get the new data down. So for the ease of, I'll use a second browser where I will log into the plug. And the plug is always available at 192.168.40.100. That is the home. That is where you will always log into the plug. A key thing to log into the plug is you have to remember I just checked, and I'm connected to the plug's Wi-Fi. So you have to be connected to the plug's Wi-Fi in order to access the plug, or else you would not be able to access. And I will use the same user. So basically, I think we have done the provisioning. I think I'll move on, and I'll show you the sync process in the later stage. Let me come back. This is what we do for provisioning. So at this point, I've assigned the users, and if I had any forms, I've assigned it to the plug. So now the key aspect about device communication and how does your devices in the field will communicate to the plug. At some point, I'll also have Berit share her the reflector, and we can show you how it looks on the iPad. But just before that is the devices, as I mentioned earlier, need to be connected to the same Wi-Fi as of the plug. So as the plug creates its own Wi-Fi, it expects every device talking to it, whether it's a laptop that you need to access the URL, whether it's the iPad you need to access the application. Everything should be on the same device Wi-Fi. And once you are on the Wi-Fi, the only way to access the plug is with the internal IP, which is 192.168.40.100. And that's a standard IP for every plug. And once you get to the IP, then from there on, it's your regular username password authentication that you would use to get in the plug. This is very similar to the way you use it on the cloud. You probably use the same username password for the cloud, and you maintain the same on the plug. And once you're in there, so those are the two things to get you inside the plug. And you also need to modify the server name on the app settings, which I will show you right now. Okay, I see this here. So I will show you where to change the settings. So this is on the settings screen, and these are the settings that this is where you change in the server name. This is where you enter the 192.168.40.100, and once you have entered that, you exit out. You go to your application. log in, and it will say connecting with SSL and log in successfully to the plug. So at this point, you are now connected to the plug's data, and any new form or any new user that was synced will now be down to the plug. You can collect data and then sync it back to the plug.
And just to reiterate, this is the step that can be done while you're in the field.
Yeah, so this step is now you do not need network connection, because once you have synced to the cloud, the plug is now an independent entity. The plug could be in the field as long as it's powered on. You could log in and sync.
So if the ThunderPlug's not on, then you don't want to sync your forms yet.
Yes, if the ThunderPlug is not on, you will not even see the Wi-Fi network, and so you can't even actually connect to the plug.
Okay.
And if you cannot connect, the application will error out saying error on sync. And yeah, that brings me back. So in your Wi-Fi settings, you will see entry for the ThunderPlug. So if you see on the top, you would that's how a ThunderPlug creates its own network. And once you connect to it, it needs username password authentication, which is unique to every device that we give. And that's how your plug is secure from other plugs. So once you do those two things, change, you don't have to come back to the settings screen. Once you change that Wi-Fi, and once you change your server name in the app, those are two things you need. And from there on, you can actually use your device without issues. Okay, I'll go back to my... So that was the part where your device communicates to the plug. And for our demo purposes, I'm using the terms iPad, iOS, but we also support Android for the plug. So if you have devices that have Android, you could also use similar setting changes and change the IP of the connecting URL and log into those. And we can help you with that even later on if you have more questions. So this now brings us to the very important part about syncing the ThunderPlug. Because at the end of the day, when you collect data on your projects, you want that data to be stored in the cloud as well. Because at some point you want to aggregate all the data from different plugs into the cloud and then do reporting on it. So the sync is a very important part of the plug. So when the plug syncs to the cloud, it's done over secure. It uses encryption, and it's done with a secure network. So that way, if anybody gains access to your Wi-Fi network, they will see encrypted data pass through the plug. The reason I've mentioned smart sync logic is the plug sync has evolved over time, and it now is clever enough to know if there is an issue during sync, or if the plug was interrupted during sync. It will move on from the next step. So it will not do the steps that were already completed. So as I was mentioning in the earlier example, if you have 10 forms that were syncing down to the plug, and if after the 5th form, if you lose power or if your network connection dies, when you gain power again or you have network again, the plug will start syncing from the 6th form onwards. So it will not do the 5 forms again. And this actually gives you benefit of time. Your sync time drastically reduces on every failure. You don't have to have the same amount of sync time on every single failure. So if you're syncing 5 forms and then the connection gets killed, next time you will be doing less. And the second benefit of the smart sync logic is it checks to see if you have low bandwidth. If it has low bandwidth, it will probably stall. The sync will wait, and it will keep pinging until you get better bandwidth, and it can sync the data up. This benefit actually adds to your preventing your data loss, because if you have less bandwidth, you could have data corruption while data transfer, or in fact even data loss. And so it will wait until you have good bandwidth and then sync the data up. And as I'll show you in the demo as well, but the sync also generates a detailed log on the sync screen. So if anybody who is syncing the plug to the cloud will have a detailed log of all the actions that took place during the sync. And for benefit of for if you want to do an audit again, you could also email the sync log to yourself or to your manager, and So that way, if the sync takes 10 hours or 5 hours, you don't have to be awake. You start the sync and you do the other activities. You get a notification via email, and once you get that, you know that the sync is complete and you move on.
One thing to note too is if you do have any issues with your sync, that report is sent to iFormBuilder, and then we can help address those issues and help you be more successful in your ThunderPlug sync.
Right. So yeah, exactly, and that's how we've actually evolved with the smart sync logic. Is we've learned from the issues that we have in the field. Just to throw the number out there, we have about 200 plugs that are being used right now, and so when those plugs sync, there could be different issues that each plug might have, and different terrains that they are used in. So that makes the plug logic more smarter when we get feedback and we understand, okay, how to make it better. So yes, our support team will always be ready to help you in that case. So I think I will ask Bert to again show the actually before that I will show the sync. I haven't shown the plug sync. So can you give it? So as we had provisioned it earlier, I just figured out we haven't synced the plug to the cloud, and the plug is open in Safari and the cloud is open in Firefox, just for your clarity, right? So we haven't synced so that we don't have the new profile down to the plug. So let's just go to the cloud sync page.
So the cloud sync page, too, to let you guys know, is if you've been given the right to sync the plug, this is going to be a new tab that's available to you through the iFormBuilder. And if you don't have that right, then you won't see this tab.
Right. So you need the right permissions to get to the cloud sync page. If you're just a data collector or a data view role, then you probably don't need access to the cloud sync and you won't see this. But if you are assigned to syncing the plug, then you should see this tab. So I'll go briefly over what is on this tab. The cloud address is something pre-configured when the plug is sent to you because we need to know where you're syncing the plug. And in this case, since we were setting it up for demo, I was syncing to training.iFormBuilder. The email log to is what I was mentioning earlier, is a benefit where you could enter your email address, and on the sync, the entire sync log will be emailed to you. Generally, by default, in the settings, we do not touch them. We let the settings be as is on every single sync. We don't, unless we have issues, we do not change anything. But I will go over what each means. Complete sync in this scenario would mean you basically sync all the data that is on the plug up to the cloud. You sync all the forms that were built on the plug up to the cloud. You sync all the users from the cloud down to the plug, all the new forms that were added down to the plug, and you also upgrade the plug to the latest code base. So as you know, our development team is ever evolving, and we've always changed and updated our source code. So now when the plug is in the field, it could be disconnected for a month, and in between that you could have 2 new releases of iFormBuilder. So then the plug is now as an additional part of the smart sync logic, the plug knows that, okay, I'm behind the cloud and I need to be up to date. It's generally beneficial for the plug to be up to date with the cloud. So it will sync the code and make all the necessary database upgrades down to the plug. So that helps keeping your plug up to date. Upload only is an option you use only in scenarios where you basically just want the data to be gone up and you do not want any new source code changes, or you think that the project is at a very critical stage where you don't want anything to change, but you just want to push the data up for analysis on the cloud. And upgrade only is an option which we use only in terms if there is a software bug or if there is a failure in your sync, and if you push a new code, then we would recommend you run this upgrade only and get the new code down. That way your sync could be complete. Because in the past we have seen scenarios where the sync process fails for a software bug, and what that leaves the plug in the field with data and which cannot be synced, and almost at that point you could collect data on your devices, sync to the plug, but the data cannot go out. And so our software team will get on the task create a fix for it and send it down to the plug, and then you use the upgrade only option, and then you can sync. A beneficial option that we have is delete on upload, which is very similar to what you would see on your devices. If you have the option unchecked, then it will leave the data on the plug, and the sync logic is smart enough to know that, okay, next time when you're syncing, you don't sync the same record again. Force upgrade is a part of the same upgrade only process, where it will not wait for failures, and it will just sync your to the latest code. And I mean, we also have documentation about this, and Barrett has links about each document at the end of the presentation. So you could refer to those if you have more information, or if you're stuck at any point, then you could always refer to the support team at iFormBuilder. So let's start the sync. You could start by clicking on the Start Sync. Right now it's making communication to the cloud server and running a sync process. This is validating the username password that was created. So as you see, that right now it's doing the comparison of the server changes. But once it is over, I'll just go over entire log so that you understand what happened at each stage. And the sync process is over, but as I mentioned, it's evolved over time, and it is I think about 10 times faster than what it used to be before. So what it did here was just connected to the cloud, to the cloud that was mentioned in the address. Just verified that it's connecting to the right cloud, the logins are correct. It initializes the sync process by verifying all your server licenses are correct. You are the right plug to connect to the cloud. It verifies that. Then it verifies that the number of profiles should be down to the plug. So initially we had this one profile, but this when we started the demo, we added a new profile, and it then figures out, okay, this is the one I need to pull down. But before it pulls anything down, it starts uploading data from the plug to the cloud. So as before the demo began, if I had collected a record, which it shows I did, it will upload that record up to the cloud. And you can then at that point, once all the upload part is done, it will download the forms from the cloud down to the plug, download any company changes, download any users that are needed, download option lists. One thing we probably would just briefly mention, but we also support lookup on the plugs. And it downloads any media files that are related to any widgets or any of the branding on the plug and pull it down. And once all the form and the user aspect is done, then it looks at the licensing part, and it looks at the server application. It looks at the code bases. So it then says, okay, the cloud is at 7.0.2.1, and the plug is also at the same release, then it doesn't need to do anything. If the plug was at a different version, then it will go and ahead and start upgrading that. So this was, once you finish, now if you look at the profiles, you should see two profiles that are synced down to the plug, right? And this is a default administrative profile, so you don't need to worry about that. But you should see a plug demo and the ThunderPlug profile, and those are the two profiles. That said, let's now go to building a form on the cloud, and let's sync that form down. So for the sake of ease, I'm just building a small 3-4 column form. And I will also use a widget, just an image, so that you can see it. select an input field, that is the date. I think date is probably, yeah, just put start date, and I'll put a signature. And in the input field, we select the signature widget. So let's just create a simple form which has these three fields. And if you go back to your data, you would see the form added to the new profile that we're in. It's not demo one.
So what I was just talking to Amol about too is now that you've created this form, it'll automatically be assigned to the user that creates it, but you want to make sure that all your users are assigned the form as well. So then the next step is going into the form assignment and then assigning your user or user groups. But what you want to keep in mind is, again, right now, it's just for this demo purposes, it's already going to be assigned to Amol, so we're just going to skip that step.
Yeah. I'm also verifying if the password of the user is set. Okay, so you see on the data feed page, you have a new plug. So let's just go ahead and sync the plug at this point, because now your cloud has new forms that you want to be synced to the plug, and you can collect data on that so that you can collect data. So I'm syncing the plug again, and it goes through the same process, validating to the cloud, connecting the username password, and you will see a form change that will show up and downloading that form.
And while this is going on, Amol, if someone is, for instance, they're in charge of more than one ThunderPlug, do you have a best practice for them as far as just assigning users or collecting the data? Is there something a piece of advice that you'd give someone?
Yes, so there are two pieces to that question. Actually, good that you asked me, because a person could be in charge to more than one project and wants to use the same plug. A person could be in charge to one project but wants to use multiple plugs. So there are two aspects, right? So without going into too detail, if you are assigned to one project and you have multiple plugs, you basically will have all the users on both the plugs for simplicity, and you will be able to use 20 users on each plug, and you don't have to do much. You just have to know which user is accessing which plug, because he's obtaining a license there. Once he does and he syncs his data, you can sync the data to the cloud. So there is very less management needed on that end. Where you need management is once if you have one plug assigned to multiple projects, then you need to know, okay, how many users are being shared between the two projects.
So do you think it's easier to have multiple plugs for one profile?
That's the need of the project. Depends on the need. If you need more than 20 users, 40 users in the field, yes, you need multiple plugs. It's better to start with that. You also need a backup plug. As with everything we do, every project, it's always good to have a backup. So if you're starting a new project, if you're starting a new task that needs the ThunderPlug, it's best to start with something with more than one.
Great, thank you.
So now we have synced, and if you see, it has pulled the form down, all the images down. If we look at the data in the plug, actually have to also manage the profile and log in to that profile. And you would drastically see the slowness when you're accessing the plug, because as I said, it being on the ARM architecture, being on the low usage, it also has less power than your cloud servers. But the benefit is that you have a server where there is no access and your data is always safe. Okay, so once I manage this profile, now I should see a plug in my data views. And I'm just going briefly over these, but I'm hoping that you're fairly aware of all these screens on iFormBuilder. You know what a data views page is, and you know what a server admin tab is. Okay, so here you see the plug form. So now, Brett, if you can share the reflector, I can show on the device. We log in. So if you see, I have to log in as that user now. So I have to go back and change to the plug demo user. And since it is connecting to the plug, it will be a little slow. So right now it is downloading all the users. The form didn't come down because it was probably not assigned. Let's go to form assignment. So you have to give assigned permissions to the user. Let's do a sync again, just to be. So everything can be controlled on the cloud and on the plug.
And while Amol's thinking, just a reminder, if you do have any questions, if you're currently in the process of doing projects with the ThunderPlug, feel free to put it in the GoToMeeting webinar chat, and he'd be happy to address those. We've had a couple coming in that I've asked him as we've been going through, but if there's anything else you want to make sure we cover, or if there's something that's not clear, please let us know. Also, we are recording this, so if you want to go back and look at this video later on, you will have access to it.
Okay, so that sync. So let's see if once this, I just finished the sync. So it's now downloading a form, which was earlier not assigned. That's an oversight on my part. Okay, so this was the form we created on the cloud, and now it has come down to the plug, and from the plug it came down to the device.
And if your iForm app looks a little different, this is using our iForm 7.0, and that just released with the iOS 8.0, and it has some new, different functionality or different features and different looks, a look and feel.
So as you see, I've collected a simple data. Your forms could be much more complicated, and as you've seen with iForm, the application is very robust enough to accommodate every single form. So once I have the data collected, I'm going to sync. This is now sending the data back to the plug. So once the sync is over, we will switch back to my screen and I'll show you the data. Can you just make me the presenter? Thank you. Okay, so it's back to my screen. So this is the plug interface. I'm on the plug server here, and the data that we collected should be here in your data views page.
So to reiterate, right now what we've done is, so far we've set it, we've provisioned the plug, we have it, we've set our devices up, we've synced the plug, and then we've gone out into the field, we've collected data, maybe a day's worth of data, and now we need to sync our data from the devices up to the cloud so that we can see it while we're out in the field and again, like Amol mentioned earlier, we can make any changes, or we can even reassign it to a user so that they can fix those changes while they're in the field versus 3 months down the road when you're already back home and there's no one in that area. So that's the step we're at right now. We're at the stage where he has just collected a day's worth of data, and that's it's now been synced to the plug, and now we want to see it from the plug.
Right, and that's one of the other benefits as well, because right now you could now, without even sending it back to the cloud, you could just analyze the data and get an Excel feed of this and just view all the data that was collected. So this is an advantage because you do not wait. There is probably a lot of time differences between where you collect the data, where you use the plug, and where somebody analyzes it later on. So if somebody is proactively want to analyze, you can just do it on the plug. You don't have to wait for it to go to cloud and then somebody on the cloud side analyzing it. You can just look at your data as I went in and looked at it, or you could run any of the feeds. All the feeds on iFormBuilder are supported on the plug. So you could run that. Once you're satisfied with whatever data is collected, you could then go back to Cloud Sync.
And so why would someone go back to the Cloud Sync at this point?
So the only reason to go to Cloud Sync is if you want to pull down new changes from the cloud, right? You don't necessarily have to push the data up to the cloud right away. You could wait on this data for a month. Mm-hmm. There is no rush to push the data. But if you want to pull down any new changes, any new forms or users that are assigned to this project, you could go to the Cloud Sync and do it.
So even though it's called Cloud Sync, I'm not really actually syncing to the cloud here.
No, you are syncing to the cloud. You are basically sending the data that is on the plug up to the cloud server.
Okay. So I need to have internet connection at this point.
At this point, your plug needs to have internet connection to run anything. Any communication on the sync process needs internet connection. And you will see with this sync, if we had created any forms on the plug, those will be pushed up. Or if we had created any forms on the cloud, they will pull down. And the data that we have collected is now getting pushed up. And we will, once the sync is over, I'll show you the data on the cloud. And since we have read on upload option, which is a very key thing to note here, the data will be wiped off from the plug. So the data won't remain on the plug. It will just remain on the cloud.
So just to reiterate that, I've actually talked to some individuals with the first time using the ThunderPlug, they had to delete on upload, and they thought they lost their data completely.
The data. Right. So that could be one thing because now you have the data and now you don't. So the data is safe and secure with iFormBuilder. So now let's go back to the plug data and see if all the data is pushed up. You should see no data in the form. Right, so it has 0 records, everything is pushed up. Let's go to the cloud, and if I go to the data at this point, I have the information and I see 1 record collected. And once I click on the ID, I would see the record here. And as I said before, you could run the same analysis here, and or you could use our robust APIs to now send data back to your backend server or your reporting server from here on.
So for us, this was a pretty smooth and fast process. But for individuals who have 3 months worth of data on the ThunderPlug, it could take longer. It's not going to be this fast, especially if you're in an area with a limited amount of Wi-Fi where maybe it's a little not as strong as what we have here in the office. That's another factor to keep in mind with syncing your ThunderPlug and syncing to the cloud. And I think I just want to note that. And if you have anything else
so that goes on with the best practices that we tell with the plug, right? It's best to not keep 3 months worth of data without syncing. If you need it for analysis, at least upload it once and keep it on the plug if you want to analyze it. But what we would say is at different intervals of a project, make a phase in the project where you sync the plug to the cloud. So, because what happens is not just the data, but we also have new software going on and we have new patches out. And it's best to keep your plug up to date rather than keeping it so out of date, because then 3 months down the line when it comes to sync, it will take 4 hours to sync. Instead of if you're syncing it every 15 days, the syncs will be just 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So if you're timelining of project, always timeline that there is a sync plug to the cloud process. And if you really do not have, then yes, as a need necessity, you couldn't sync, then that's fine. But the emphasis is on keeping it up to date as much as possible. At the same time, because it also clears up the space on the plug, you can actually get more data once you sync to the cloud. You have more space available to collect more and more data.
So how often would you suggest people first sync their devices to the ThunderPlug and then the ThunderPlug to the cloud? You said do that more often. So what would be best practices?
First, syncing the device to the plug. The syncing the device to the plug part is as they collect data and they want to sync it. As the data on the device gets more and more, the device will become slower. So you sync it more often than.
So if they have the ThunderPlug in one central location, say maybe on a daily basis, try to sync.
At the end of your day, at the end of 2 days, at the end of a week at the most, right? Come back to your central location, sync your device to the plug. So now when you said the plug is at the central location, then it probably will have internet or might not, right? So there are two options. If it has internet, then as all the devices come and sync to it, you just push the data up to the cloud. If it doesn't have internet, then make sure that at some point you sync the plug to the cloud also. Because in more cases, we have seen if there is an issue in one of the plugs and we patched it, if you have your code up to date, you will not have the issue in your plug. It's better that you don't find it 3 months down the line that there was an issue. So keeping your software up to date is key. I think that is how the sync process works. If I proceed further, I think that brings us to the end. I think Barrett has put a good Q&A session in there where you could probably have refer all those links, see a good videos from Z and Tony, and see how they use the plug in the field, and read about our documentation about the plug. And that's it. So there are any question and answers.
Well, I want to thank you, Amol, for taking the time to meet with us today and to go through this all. I think hopefully this was helpful to all of our members and all of you who have attended. We will be sending I'll be sending an email to you with the recording or a link to where the recording will be hosted, as well as the slides. You'll be able to go through the slides and click on these links. A lot of these, the top 3 are already in our Customer Success Center articles and knowledge base, while the other videos and everything can be found on YouTube or through some of our blog. But I'll be sending that all to you. Again, thank you, Amol, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to email either one of us, and hopefully you found this helpful.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.